This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I'm happy to welcome everybody tonight to this village board meeting, and I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd all join me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I heard that.
It's not a beer.
Okay. The first item on our agenda this evening is a public hearing regarding a amendment to the village and town, and this is to the village as it solely affects the village.
I'm not hearing anybody.
Janet's not hearing.
Can the rest of you hear?
I can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry, Janet, it must be on your end.
Janet, can you, is Janet, no, she's not calling. She's not one of the callers.
No, she's right in the middle.
Greg, why don't you call her on your cell phone? Let her listen to the audio there.
Good suggestion. On her mobile?
It looks like she's reaching for it.
We can hear her?
I'm good now.
Okay,
Okay. I'm good. I've got about 50% of my battery left on that, but we'll work with that. You're hearing us clearly now, Janet?
Yes.
Okay. I would ask, the first item on our agenda of business is a public hearing with respect to local law number 2 of the Village of Lake Placid for the year 2020. And this local law will address an amendment to the land use code as it relates to short-term vacation rentals. I would ask Anita to read the notice of public hearing for the record.
notice is hereby given that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Lake Placid will hold a public hearing on Monday, April 20th, 2020 at 5 p.m. by a go-to meeting to consider proposed local law number 2 of 2020, a local law to amend the Village of Lake Placid, Town of North Elba Land Use Code. Comments may also be emailed to the village clerk at lpclerk@villageoflakeplacid.ny.gov to be received by 5 p.m. April 20th, 2020. A link to the go-to meeting will be publicized on the Village of Lake Placid Facebook page and website on Friday, April 17th, 2020. A complete copy of this proposed local law may be found on the village website at villageoflakeplacid.ny.gov, or you may obtain a copy by emailing the village clerk at lpclerk@villageoflakeplacid.ny.gov. All interested persons are invited to participate in the public hearing and will be given an opportunity to be heard. This local law shall take effect immediately upon filing with the Secretary of State. Signed, Anita Espling, Village Clerk.
Okay.
Yeah,
For the
because
benefit,
this is a public hearing, I think all the call-in people should identify themselves.
Yes, and it looks like we have 7 callers, so I will try to unmute them one at a time and see
if they wish to comment.
if they wish to comment.
No, and I think you need to get their names for attendance at the public hearing.
Right.
Okay, so I can tell Bill Billerman is one of them. Let me try to unmute you, Bill. Bill, do you have any commentary for the public hearing?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you. I see that, sorry, we're figuring out how to make this work. I see that Andy Flynn is on, although I'm assuming you're on for the newspaper. I'm trying to unmute you.
Yeah, that's correct, for the newspaper.
Okay, so you do not have any public commentary.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. There is an ES on. Let me unmute you.
Anita, would it be easier just to unmute them all and then mute them all back again?
I could try. I think we'll have multiple people that's speaking, but sure. Is there anyone who's on the call that wants to speak to the public hearing?
No, but my name's Mark Driscoll.
Okay,
I'm here.
so Mark Driscoll, do you have comments for the public hearing?
No, just a curious, praying for good outcomes.
Okay, thank you very much. Is
Anita,
there-
it's Lori Fitzgerald. I'm on just to listen.
Okay, thank you, Lori. There are 3 other callers, I believe. Is anyone on to make a comment to the public hearing?
Ask them to identify themselves.
If you have not identified yourself, could you please do so now?
This is Lisa Lester. I'm just on to listen.
Elise Stosiak, I'm just here for commentary.
Thank you. I think there might be one more person, though. We got 4 names. I think there's a 5th one. Is there anyone else on the line? Is there anyone who'd like to make any public commentary?
I would say in the absence of any additional comments, I would close this public hearing as it relates to local law number 2, amending the Village of Lake Placid Town of North Elba Land Use Code. And the specific amendment addresses a clarification on the parking requirement for vacation rentals noted as being in the Village Center District, running from 1 Main Street to the U.S. Post Office, just for clarification. If there's no further comments before this public hearing, we'll close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed.
5:08.
5:08. Okay. With that, with the public hearing closed, we'll move into the regular board meeting, and there was no indication of anyone who specifically requested time before the board this evening. With that said, we'll move into section 3 of the agenda. And the first item we have under clerk items is the minutes of the last board meeting dated April 6th. That happened to be our annual organizational meeting and a regular meeting, board meeting combined. I would ask for, you all have a copy of the minutes, which were supplied to you earlier. I would ask for a motion approving the minutes as presented by the clerk.
So moved, Art.
And whoever moves, if you put your hand up just so we can figure out who it is.
Art.
Art. Do we have a second to Art's motion? Second. Any further discussion on the minutes? If not, we'll call a motion. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as presented by the clerk, please signify by raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion's carried, they're adopted. Thank you. The next item we have under the clerk items. You've all received the results of the bids that were submitted in connection with the replacement of the Mirror Lake Drive sidewalk and drainage improvements for the village portion that runs from roughly the boathouse on the backside of Mirror Lake to the village line. You should have in your file, in your packet, a letter from Ivan Zadral Associates that gives you a report. There were 4 bids submitted. Each one of the bids was bid with 2 options. The base bid would have been using strictly paver stone finishes. Alternate bid number A would be using concrete surface with granite curbing, and alternate B would be using a concrete stamped surface with granite curbing. The low bid is HMA Contracting Corporation. That bid using concrete came in at $568,459.23. If it were to be stamped surface, it would have been $650,545.63, still a low bid for that alternate. Or if we did the paver stones, it would be $830,274.43. I think we have 2 issues here to consider. One first would be to determine the product to be used for the sidewalk. I know we've had some discussion with that in our prior work sessions. And then we can entertain a motion to award the bid. Any discussion on the product itself, which would either be base, being paver, concrete being alternate A, or concrete stamp being alternate B?
Alternate A.
Okay. Do you want to put that in the form of a motion?
So moved.
Scott moves alternate A. Is there, and Art seconds. Any further discussion on the alternate decision?
Yeah, the only thing we haven't decided yet is if we're going to put a color into the cement.
That was understood. That's correct. And that would come about as a change order to the bids that you have in front of you. From talking with Brad, the intent here is to request that we insert a color into the actual concrete pour rather than just coloring the surface. So that will result in a change once the contract has been awarded, and that'll come through as change order number 1 when we have that. I think what we're awaiting right now would be the samples of the various colors that could be used to change the concrete from a typical concrete gray to an alternate color that we wanted to see samples of before we made that decision. So with that said, we'll move the motion on the material to be used, and that's to be alternate A. All in favor? Again, if your hands.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the concrete material will be used for the sidewalks as the surface. The next motion that we need is to actually award the bid, and the recommendation that we have from our engineering and planning people is to award the bid to the low bidder, which was HMA Contracting Corporation. The amount of the bid, $568,459.23. Do we have a motion supporting that?
So moved.
Scott moves. Peter seconds.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, just as information, this is the village's portion of what remains to be finished on the backside of Mirror Lake. In addition to this, the town board has entertained a bid for the portion that is in the town. that would extend from where the village line is on the backside of Mirror Lake to approximately Harbor Lane on the, as you come around the lake toward the Mirror Lake Inn. They have also elected to use concrete as the product, and they have also elected to award the bid to HMA Contracting, who was also the low bidder for the town portion of this project. So the intent here is that the project will get underway as soon as possible, with the objective of hopefully having it worked on this spring and finished as early in the summer as possible. Peter, did you want to add any comments?
It's high time. I think the community is going to be very happy.
Okay, anybody else wish to comment before we move on? If not, I think we're all happy
I
to
feel
see
like I lost a child.
I think we're all happy to see this project come to fruition. I know Art in particular and Brad put a lot of time into researching materials, and I think we're entering into this with our eyes wide open and with all the information we could possibly have available. And the concrete at the moment, given the dollars involved here, seems to represent the right decision for that project. Are there any other items to come before the clerk section?
No, there are not.
Okay. In that case, then I will move on. The treasurer requested to be excused this evening. I think she has something she's doing with her daughter. However, the only item that we have from the treasurer's office for discussion and consideration is the bills to be paid. You have in your packet, and you have received a detailed listing for affidavit number 17 of the current budget year, representing bills to be paid in totality amounting to $1,019,931.10. I'd be happy to list the detail if any of you wish to have that information as to how it breaks out. If not, well, thank you, Art. Is there a second to Art's motion? Peter? If there's no further comment on the bills and items presented for payment, I know they've been reviewed. We'll call the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we can let the treasurer know those are cleared. Under new business to be considered, I sent to all of you late last week a list of individuals who had either approached the village or the town or the code office with respect to an interest in serving as members of the short-term rental appeals board, which will need to be put in place. I have not seen any responses from you. I believe there were 12 individuals listed that we had indications of interest. I've indicated, to the best of my knowledge, whether they were a town or a village resident, or in some cases maybe not either. I don't think we had anybody that didn't list, though, as being in either the town or the village. Also, I tried to indicate for your benefit whether they were individuals that were actually engaged in the rental of short-term rental vacation properties, or in some cases not involved. And again, some of these people are not well known to us, so I'm happy to. What I would like to do is to just draw your attention to the issue we've got here. I think I would recommend that we take this up in our next work session, where we can maybe have a little bit, give you a little bit more time to raise questions as to these expressions of interest.
Do you need a motion for that?
I don't need a motion for that tonight. I think Janet, unless you think there's a reason for acting on this evening, I think we should review these and make sure that we know the candidates well. And because part of what I think we're looking for here is a cross-section of interest that will be equitable to both the people that are engaged in the business as well as those who may just be representing and wishing to represent the community at large.
As you know, the town board did make appointments at their meeting last week. Of course, those are dependent upon the village expressing its opinion with the appointees. So we'll meet again in 2 weeks, but I think it is a good idea to get this board appointed as appeals are likely to be filed.
Yes. Also, as information, when the board acted last week, they acted actually before all of these interested parties had been considered. I do not know at this moment whether the board will remain with the motion that they and the 5 candidates that they selected, or whether they'll wish to amend their vote, but that's up to them.
Mayor?
Yes, Jason?
Jay has been fantastic with relaying communication from the county, and it may have gotten mixed up with those emails. Did the town board communicate the individuals they voted on Tuesday?
They did.
Did I miss them? I must have missed the email within.
We don't know about it.
What's that?
We haven't been told.
Oh, okay, that's what I was asking. Maybe I didn't.
I'd rather keep it that way.
What's that?
I'd rather keep it that way.
I'm aware of the recommendation that went to the town board, and I believe that they followed the recommendation that came from the code office.
That's my understanding too.
I will be happy to forward to you a copy of that. I do have that in my office.
Oh, okay, yeah, that would be fantastic, because there's, and we can discuss this again in your recommendation, I would think, at the workshop. I'm just, again, my apprehension is anyone who owns an STR and be on a board that makes decisions that influences them. I'm not always comfortable. It's much like individuals who do a private sector job would have been in, say, a pharmaceutical, and now they're part of some sort of oversight committee to over a pharmaceutical field. I just feel like it would be more of an independent, a cross section of individuals, maybe just exclude the owners themselves.
Well, that's precisely, Jason, why I felt that you as trustees would probably prefer to have a little bit more time to ask questions about the candidates and satisfy each of you individually, so that when you select your choices, you can do it with full knowledge of what the candidates represent.
Oh, okay, thank you. I just hearing that the town board acted, I just felt like that may have been a little bit, maybe I missed something. I apologize.
Well, let's take that up in work session. That'll be this coming Tuesday. And in the meantime, any questions that any of you have as trustees, you're welcome to, if you wish, forward them to me. I'll do my best to get whatever additional information. What I provided is what I saw in written form that was handed to me from the code office upstairs.
And just to be clear and to be fair, I don't feel that you are pushing a sort of a decision, and I do appreciate you. You did offer us the list of individuals who expressed interest. I was just thinking that my assumption is whenever something like this comes up, you generally wait for a workshop session for a full board discussion before we'd even move. So I was just waiting for that particular meeting.
Okay. Well, that is at the moment, unless one of you prefers something different, that would be my recommendation as to how we proceed forward. I do believe by May, and I agree with Janet's comments that this appeals board is an integral part of the short-term vacation rental law and therefore needs to be in place as soon as we can, I think, reasonably act on that part of it.
Sounds good.
So nothing to act on there this evening. Under old business, I would like, if it's your pleasure, earlier this evening, we conducted a public hearing on the amendment of the local law number 2, which is an amendment to the land use code, as I explained, as it relates to parking requirements specifically identified between number 1 Main Street and the United States Post Office. And the reason for the amendment is that the law, as it was recorded, inadvertently did not recognize the fact that Main Street has, in that neighborhood, has different parking limitations on it than the other neighborhoods and other districts of the community, at least in a general sense. Most of Main Street is 0 setback properties where there's never going to be a possibility of on-site parking. So therefore, the intent of this legislation is to simply acknowledge the fact that while on-site parking is not contemplated or required, that the applicants nevertheless have an obligation and a responsibility with their application to identify appropriate parking for clients who may be occupying their vacation rental properties, of which there are at least 2 or 3 on the main street that we're aware of. The issue here that makes it different is, as I said, is that there is no on-site parking opportunity. How the existing ones have dealt with it, and this is more for the benefit of those that are listening, is that either they have found appropriate parking locations and sites elsewhere in the village, which may be on private property, or in some cases, they have actually acquired permits from the village, which they purchase, that have provided them with limited opportunity for parking, usually in one of our parking lots overnight. Aside from that, there really are no other opportunities, but it's necessary for the sake of the application to make it clear that what is not permitted on the main street is overnight parking. Currently, it's not permitted. We clean the streets after the bars close between 4 a.m. in the morning and 6 a.m. so that they're cleaned up of any debris or any other issues that we have, as you all know. And it's not only winter, we do that year round. If you trustees are comfortable with that, I would very much like to vote on this issue this evening so that we can get this amendment recorded with the state and get it into place as soon as possible so that the application that has been going out can be corrected to reflect the actual requirements that are there for parking.
Do you need a motion or what do you need, Craig?
Janet, I think that's usually a roll call vote.
A roll call vote is not necessary, but it's a good idea.
Okay.
The motion would be to adopt as the amendment to the land use code, the local law number 2 of 2000, which would become effective upon filing with the Secretary of State's office.
So moved.
Second.
Art moves, Peter seconds. We'll do this as a roll call vote then. Trustee Monroe?
Aye.
Trustee Leon?
Aye.
Trustee Devlin?
Aye.
I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor Devlin, Trustee Holderreed,
Aye.
and Mayor Randall votes aye. So the vote to adopt local law number 2 of 2020 to amend the village land code as described is unanimously adopted. The other item that is going to come up with respect to the land use code, I'm not asking that we act on it this evening, is we need to participate in the development of a steering committee, which will consist of individuals, I think we pick one, town board picks one, and then I believe that what Jay and I agreed on is that those would be members of the community, from the community, and then each board would also designate a liaison, which we already do for the Development Commission. In our case, it's Art, and that liaison would also serve to represent the board. So I merely ask you at this point to thinking about that, and again, I think it's something that we can I would be interested in any names from the community that you think would be someone that you would want to represent the community. This is a project that we believe will take no less than a year and probably will take more than a year to complete. There will be, it'll be managed under the Development Commission, as has been the practice in the past. And there will be professional assistance sought once that committee is formed and they can create their game plan. There will be a chairman of that committee. The committee itself will appoint the chair. Janet, anything else you want to add on that?
Well, I think the process would be to also have I thought we were an RFP go out to get some professional help to work on our master plan, from which would then come amendments if needed to the land use code overall. I think that the steering committee might be a facilitator or help facilitate the professionals program. I would think that you would want on this committee also some members from the review board and the ZBA as people who are involved in this on a more daily matter. But I don't think the steering committee's life should be go on too far before the professionals are hired, because until that happens, that's just going to that's just going to make the whole process longer.
Well, those are good points to keep in mind, and as we work this forward in the next few days, we'll certainly take those into consideration. This is probably one of the most important undertakings. And again, our current land use code is only 10 years old, but in 10 years' time, the village has certainly moved considerably. And I know in brief discussion I had with the code office that there are also technical issues with the land code that the code office itself is interested in seeing considered during this period of time. Anything else under that topic? If not, I'll move on to Main Street. Not a lot of activity there right now. I mean, our engineers are working. There are communications going back and forth between the New York State Department of Transportation in terms of they're keeping up to date, and we're following that correspondence between Ivan and Albany. It's been pretty regular. Peter, did you want to comment a little bit on the progress of the parking project across from MBT?
well, nobody's happy about losing 20 parking spots by having an internal ramp, but I'm not sure if there's an alternative. This scheme is the least expensive that can be come up with on this site. The most efficient use of the property. So I think it has a lot of merit. And I was going to tell Jim Edgecombe, there well may be a lot of stimulus money coming from the feds, so we should get this ball rolling.
Yeah.
Out there.
The other thing that we're looking for is a visual of as you're standing on the street and looking at it, what the appearance of it might be. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you gave Jim the authority to begin to prepare that.
Yes, everybody would love to see that. That's very important.
Well, and I'm also thinking that with the weather getting better and with people, even while we're practicing our social distancing and staying at home, that more and more people are going to be out, and they're going to be our own community people because we don't have visitors here right now to speak of. That it would be the concept of getting some visuals out so that people can begin to become familiar with the designs that we've looked at for the reconstruction of Main Street and also the parking structure. It would begin to give the community at least a sense of where we're at with the project, so that when there is a time that we can host a public discussion, that people have at least a sense of what we've been working on all winter, sometimes only by technology. And that's a project. I'll work with that committee, Peter, and try to get them to refocus on that. I had a discussion across the street today with Roost, and I'll bring that up in a minute. But they're beginning to talk about Main Street and wanting to spruce up the community, and those are all topics that were in that discussion. If there's nothing else on Main Street, I'll just move on to the issues. As I said, I had a discussion this afternoon with MJ and Jim at Roost. They're hosting a tourism strategy session tomorrow, which is actually open to their members and local businesses. And I will send to you, if any of you are interested, there's a link that you can link in on, so you'll be able to see what they're talking about. It's titled Adirondack Tourism Strategy, Pathway Forward and a Toolkit. And what they were talking to us about today was their wish list of things that the village would consider doing as people start to come out of being based at home. And the theory here is that the first phase of coming out of mitigation is going to be a reintroduction of local people to our businesses. So this is all kind of preliminary discussion because that hasn't happened yet. But I think we can anticipate if the results of this virus issue continue to show improvement, that the state is going to make moves to begin to reintroduce non-essential activity in one way or another, and probably not all at once, but over a period of time. So the things that they were discussing with me today were obviously our normal spring cleanup, which our crews are already doing, although as I pointed out to her, we're operating at 50% production because half of our normal work crews are being housed on call at home during this period, and the other half are obviously out there working. We are making progress with the initial run of sweeping sand from our curbs along our side streets. I saw today that they were in the upper end of Main Street around the Mirror Lake Inn section. It was pretty apparent that they had made remove the initial sand from the street. It's also interesting to notice on some of the side streets that there's some areas where we still have frozen snowbanks. So even though it's been mild and we've had typically spring weather, not everything has thawed out yet. So they're working on it. The other things they were talking about were whether or not we could repave Main Street before summer. I indicated the batch plants aren't even open at this point, but that there's no plan to repave. First of all, it's a state highway. But I did remind them that the state has extensive road work going on Route 86 west of the village and also east of the village coming up at some points, although the mobilization dates for those haven't been, to my knowledge, released yet. Our project, and again, I remind them that that although we had hoped to have this project underway this spring, it clearly at this point is going to be a soft start in the fall, following Labor Day, assuming we get the bid package out in June, as is currently the plan, that we receive the work permits that we need from the state to be able to work under Main Street, and that we have a successful bid when the time comes. So that's where we're at right at the moment. In the meantime, I'm hoping to that we can begin to work as the Main Street group that was working on this. The subcommittees are still working, but again, it's all by as we're doing this evening. It's all using technology. It does have it does in some ways slow us down. So those are objectives of Bruce. What I've indicated is that we certainly, before we reopen the public restrooms on the street, they will be cleaned, they will be desanitized. There was a question as to whether or not we would be able to put sanitizer in those facilities so that the public would have it to use. That's something we'll have to take up with Brad and his people as to the advisability of doing that. But, and I believe my guess is that we'll probably see a soft opening coming from the state on restaurants and dining rooms. We will, and again, I think sanitizer will probably be a topic there as well. But while I'm thinking about that, because of the order that we have to supply face masks to our essential workers whenever they're working out in public, or whenever they're in contact with the public. We went out and did some research in the last few days to see about acquiring face masks. The results were not encouraging. However, Mindy reminded me that we have a medical supply house that actually resupplies our medicine cabinets in each of our departments. So we contacted that company. The company's name is Cintas. And we do have committed, and this may seem a little bit weird, but we have committed to purchasing a pallet of face masks. And just for your information, that measurement is 10,000. And not thinking that although we would use them over time, they are disposables. I did take the time to go out and speak with our neighboring communities of Saranac Lake, Tupper Lake, Wilmington. And I did put in a call for Joe Pete and Keene. I haven't connected with him yet, but to indicate that at least for a time, we would have a significant supply of those masks, which are going to be needed. And it wouldn't surprise me even if when the local restaurants reopen, they'll have that same requirement that all of their staff are going to have to be not only wearing a mask, but also wearing gloves. So hard to come by. I expect we'll take delivery. I think the document indicated that we could expect delivery by April 30th. So we will have a good supply of face masks. If all of a sudden this were to come to an end, Brad advised me that we do use these regularly in our departments, particularly in the wastewater plant where they're using them. So I'm not thinking that the number should be a deterrent here, but it was the only source that was available. So we do have those coming. Any other thoughts or questions? I think also the county, and information that I saw over the weekend, has sent out directives to their town and hence to the village to ask us to begin thinking about how we're going to bring our communities back into a more normal existence. And I think that only came out over the weekend. But I think we should be thinking about that, and I would look forward to discussions with any of you, and certainly during our next work session, as to any thoughts you have on that. My guess is it's going to be a soft beginning. I'm hopeful that maybe that will start occurring in May. For your information, they did reopen the golf courses with limitations this past weekend, and they have also shifted on the closure of boat launch sites, and they've gone from only essential usage of the sites. They backed off this weekend to basically all we have to advise the public of that are using our sites is that they must maintain social distancing, which is 6 feet. So with that said, we removed the non-essential signs over the weekend and are replacing them with social responsibility signs. Thoughts, questions? If not, I'm sure we'll have an active discussion at our work session. And that's pretty much all that I have. I would ask about commissioners. Any commissioner reports?
I
Art?
talked to Brad about trying to get the sample granite that possibly will be used on Main Street so that we can do the section from the front door of the town hall out to the street, just so we can have a chance to see it, walk on it, get a feel for what it'll look like. And I also asked him to see if he could get some sample or a pallet or two of the Permacon brick that we didn't use around Mirror Lake and put that on the sides of the doors and possibly around the sidewalk in the front. And my thought there is that who knows what's going to happen by the time we do Main Street. And if granite becomes out of our price range, we might fall back on brick, and it would be nice to see what it looks like and have another mock-up so that you could walk on it, see what it looks like and how it'll hold up after a year.
I don't think that's a bad idea. Did you, obviously the town board, the town would need to bless that, I assume, so we'll run that by Jay.
Okay.
But I think that's a good idea. We do need to put them someplace where people can see them and comment on them.
And I think it'd be a nice touch in front of the town hall anyways.
After all the time you invested and the efforts of learning about these, I think we all agreed the product was very good. And in all likelihood, if it were a smaller project than what Mirror Lake requires, we in the town might have elected to go that way.
And I talked to Kimball today. Patty McConvey reached out to me about or inquired whether at least collecting information if we'd be interested in hanging banners for the graduating class, much like other communities have had. Kimball has returned her email giving her some numbers, but that she's going to put together sort of a proposal, so to speak, to present or at least give to the village board so we can discuss it at a workshop meeting and see how the village board members would feel about it. She's received a thumbs up from Roy Hoser, town supervisor of Wilmington. But I connected her with Kimball and she's collecting some information and she's going to put more of a formal request for the board to review to see if it works.
Well, certainly this year, given the conditions that we're in, where hopefully our graduation will still be as we know it. But I think the idea, anything we can do to help lift the spirit of our community a little bit during this period of time is worth considering.
Sure. Even though the governor's put us on pause till May 15th, there is a strong feeling that the rest of the school year may be canceled. We just, as far as New York's concerned, we're going in increments of a couple of weeks. So we won't know until 2 weeks out.
For sure. Anything else? I should mention to you too that I had a discussion last week with Charisse from the beautification. And again, trying to add a little bit of color and hopefully lift people's spirits a little bit. She is going to move forward with some early plantings in the Main Street area in particular. I did caution her that, well, early plantings might be okay, early being the month of May, that the project for the Mirror Lake sidewalk would probably preclude plantings around the lake this year. You may recall the last time that we removed the pots while they were doing constructions to avoid damaging them. So she is going to proceed with doing what she can. She's got, I believe they're pansies, which is a cold weather plant that she usually would be putting out early in the season. Keep in mind, we're at least 2 weeks earlier in terms of the weather than what we ordinarily would be, but she is working on that. And again, she's operating under the same conditions we are, with about half the staff that she ordinarily would have at her disposal. If there's nothing else under commissioners, I'll just draw your attention to some correspondence items. Most of you, I think, have seen electronically the Ausable River Watershed Group put out their 2019 Mirror Lake watershed report, water quality report. It's difficult to judge in some ways, as the newspaper reported, I think today. It's a little bit, its findings are a little bit better, but keep in mind that we had a very mild winter, and certainly the weather conditions are not what we normally would expect. So, and they do recognize the fact that the village and town have been working with them collaboratively on a number of different initiatives, both to reduce salt application, but also working with them on equipment pieces, either to measure applications, which we're doing, but which will be I think will be more valuable next year when we actually have all of the equipment. We're also installing some equipment in Mirror Lake, which will help them as they gather their scientific data. The one piece that has not really worked effectively well, and Peter, chime in if you would, please, is the pieces dealing with private properties and parking lots and the amount of salt. That is an area where I think we're going to need next year maybe to offer some extra help and support to this project to remind contractors that salt application should be minimized wherever possible. Other than that, in your packet, you have a letter that was addressed to the Adirondack Park Agency. It went out under the signatures of Kim Davey for the electric department and the mayor. Simply part of the APA's update of the unit management plan for the rail trail and the future of the rail system that currently is sitting out there between here and Tupper Lake. What we particularly are pointing out here was the difficulties that we have and the impediments that the railroad tracks currently cause whenever we have to send equipment down that track to do repairs on that 115-volt transmission line coming in from Raybrook, and what it would mean to us in the event, both in terms of being able to get equipment out there that's on rubber wheels, as opposed to having to have specialized equipment, which does not exist in the region. or as happened 2 years ago, where maybe it's 3 now, where we had to bring a company in here and they had to actually lay timbers and completely cover the track for probably close to 2 miles to get to an area where a relatively otherwise simple repair was required to get the power back on and then to replace the equipment that had failed. So you will see that National Grid is addressing the same issue with a similar letter. I might add they added about 2 more pages to it, but it's from the perspective of getting our power in here and having a very limited way of getting repairs out there when we need them. That is what precipitated the decision to issue a support letter for the project, and hopefully it'll help create a future for that line somehow. That's all I have for this evening. Is there anything that anyone else wishes to bring up? Like you said, Art, it'll be a short meeting.
Good job.
I would be happy to invite questions or comments from anyone else, and we'll unmute you right now. If you have a question, it would be helpful if you would indicate your name, please.
Any questions?
Well, I don't think everybody's unmuted.
I think
No.
some are muted on their end. I am muted on this end.
A lot of them have dropped off too.
Okay. If there's no further questions or comments from anybody who is visiting this meeting electronically, I would be happy to entertain then a motion for adjournment. Scott? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.